crazy weather at the moment, so I don't really feel like going out in it, even though we're finally free and we can go wherever we want for however long we want. So, oh well, tomorrow's another day. But looking at those roses and knowing how many raspberries I picked this morning, I think I might get busy in the kitchen. Storm looks a little crazy because I'm really trying to avoid this little bit of mess that I started, and I really don't feel like finishing. Really need to finish that. Oh well, it'll wait. And I started to do that, but c'est la vie. Some beautiful roses today. Emma, they're yours. They're so beautiful. Yeah, it's kind of crazy out here. Ooh. Looks like our picnic's not on, Tony. But this time last year I made some beautiful rose petal and raspberry jam. These clouds are a little bit scary. So yeah. Beautiful. They taste divine, these roses. Not only do they smell beautiful, they taste good too. Found my old recipe book my mum gave me, oh, I really don't know, maybe when I left home many eons ago. It's so cool to actually be able to look at her writing and remember cooking with her. I guess that's where I am a trained chef, but in a former life, very much retired these days. However, I now understand where I get my lack of following a recipe. I just never do. And I can see here that Mum has done, or she's either forgotten to include something, or she's written another recipe. Even in her very later life, she used to write recipes just obsessively, and she always shared them with anybody that wanted recipes. And she was a beautiful cook. All of my aunties were as well. So I guess it was just natural that, you know, food was a thing that became a passion of mine. Hard not to be passionate about food, especially living in France. Everything's so fresh and beautiful, and to be able to harvest this amount of beautiful berries out of your own garden on any given day during summer is just a gift, and makes me get in the kitchen, which is probably not the greatest for Tony because I'm pretty messy. So he's a great sous chef, so he usually comes behind me and tidies up after me, which is I'm very thankful for. So yeah, love to see my mama's writing. So, as I said, I am a trained chef in a former life. However, these days, I'm all about convenience and shortcuts. Tony's actually helping me write the recipes out because I never follow a recipe, so I just go with what I've got generally. But there are a few things I might mention here. I'm making a raspberry mascarpone tart today, so it's kind of like a very French pastry, but I'm using things that I have in the pantry and in the garden. France has the most incredible pre-made pastries. Not a great pastry chef, so I love this because I don't succeed a lot of the time with my pastries. I'm a little bit too impatient, a bit like my art. I don't do things slowly normally. So any good supermarket has this pastry available, and you simply unwrap it, let it thaw for a few moments, and voila, you have you're ready to go. So this tart's very basic. Normally I do it with a puff pastry, but today I'm actually trying it with a like a short crust pastry to see how it goes. So you just pre-bake your pastry in your tart pan, doesn't matter what shape. I prefer this one because it's actually very thin, so you don't have to put a lot of mascarpone and a lot of raspberry in, because it's actually quite an intense dessert, I think you'd call it. Great to have with wine or coffee. So, and then you just, the bigger raspberries are ideal to put on the top, but you do a layer of pastry, a layer of jam, which thankfully I still have some left from our raspberries last year, which we store in our cellar. So during the winter months we were able to use a lot of our produce here in the gardens and from the orchard, and really only just starting to run out, and we're back into being able to produce again. So that's pretty cool. And even though we don't produce commercially, it's great to be able to grow and eat your own food. Unfortunately, our cherry trees suffered in the Artic Freeze this year, and the storms just took many of the blossoms overnight. So we normally have like about between 300 and 400 kilos on each tree, because they're massive 60-year-old trees, and they are the most incredibly beautiful cherries. Most of those we give away to the community by just leaving them on our front fence. So the locals know that we do that. We do that with any extra produce that we have here. This year we may be producing some more for our own use. We're just getting into learning about the things that we grow and experimenting with drying and producing jams, bottling, preserves. I do a lot of work with essential oils and potpourri, so oil extraction. Heaps of fun to do. So basically you bake your pastry. Just had to rush and close everything up. The storm is broken. Just close this gigantic door. It has these little peepholes. So, well, they're not little, they're all the way up the door. Beautiful, you can keep the house locked and have the breeze coming through. Yeah, I think it's settled in for a while. Well, I'm still not doing that. So I really wasn't joking about being a train wreck mess-wise in a kitchen. So thankful that Tony is here to clean up, or help me clean up. So your ingredients are basically your pastry, which you pre-bake, prior to layering your mascarpone and berries, and then finishing off with the gel top. Just play around with it and have a go. You can't really lose too much. As I was saying, these days I don't do everything from scratch like I used to in my restaurant. So I use things like this. Cream is really good. It's very hard to find cream to thicken here in France. However, this with mascarpone really does do the trick. So, and it creates a beautiful layer for your fruit to sit upon. The other thing, to make your own jelly or gels, like a glaze actually, to go over the fruit, to sort of set it and your tart doesn't, or your galac doesn't fall apart easily, is agar. So the instructions are on it. I won't bore you with those. This is available in most supermarkets. It's 100% natural. Mascarpone, the best thing in the world. So delicious. I don't add sugar to that just because I don't like sweet things. You don't have to. You could just use normal sugar. Or sometimes, if I really want a sweet taste, I'll put honey, just a small amount of honey. We don't really eat sugar as such here in our cooking. Generally, we do have a splurge if we go to a patisserie or go out for high tea or something. So we don't not eat sugar, we just don't normally cook with it. Same with salt. But it's personal choice. Yeah, so you can either dust the top of your tart with this, or just include in your mascarpone cream mix to taste. The other thing is, when I make the red rose petal and raspberry jam, I process the petals in such ways. I pull them apart and wash them thoroughly, and then reduce them in water to create a syrup. And then, of course, you strain them through a chinois or sieve like this, and then you keep that rose water. I didn't have any left, so actually I have this always on hand because I do like to create recipes that include a taste of rose occasionally, particularly if I'm doing like a Mediterranean dish. I love a lot of Persian food, so I have this and orange oil always on hand. Smells beautiful, tastes beautiful. And you get the word of caution here is to less is more. So it can become quite an overpowering taste and not pleasant to eat. A little bit like lavender and lots of different florals can become quite a little bit like a chemical taste if you use too much. So just a few drops at a time and use to taste. So yeah, if you're just using store-bought jam, then you just add a couple of drops to that. So it's basically fruit, mascarpone, jam, pastry. I've actually said that all back the front, as I usually do. So as you can hear, the storm is really approaching. So glad we didn't go on that picnic, so excuse the thunder and lightning in the background. So basically with your pastry, you simply grease your tray or tart base, I guess, and then press in to the corners a little bit. Use the paper, the baking paper that's already provided with your pastry if you're using store-bought. If you're not, I would suggest using this sort of paper so that you can weight it. It just makes your pastry a little bit finer and a little bit crisper. So as you can see, we have an overlap there, so it's just a matter of trimming it. I'm not going to bother today, but over here you can see that this, of course, the circle doesn't fit that well. You can push these little bits of pastry in and finish it off that way. We're just having it for our own. If I was doing this professionally, I would make sure that everything was perfect, but just for our own selves, that's fine. So you just trim the pastry. Pretty easy to do, just apply a little bit of pressure on the edges. and it left over. You can actually keep that leftover pastry and create something else. Sometimes I do make a smaller tart. I may do that in a minute. So also you need to weight your pastry. It only takes about 10 minutes in the oven on about 150. Ours is a fan forced oven, so you just go with what your own oven, you know, your own oven. So the other Hammond ladies here had a bit of an all-night baking session recently and created some amazing food, but I can't find anything now. So normally I have little ceramic baking beads. They're like a little pea-sized piece of ceramic material that is able to be used in, no, this is actually a Boreo rice. I was just going to say the ladies have put it in my beads in a safe place. So the other thing that you can use if you don't have your beads, or you don't, you know, it's not something that you normally use, any rice can be used. It's just to weight the pastry, and the best thing about it is it can be reused to do this. So you just spread it out. It keeps your base pastry nice and flat, and this allows it also to cook evenly. I say 10 minutes, but generally it's just until it's golden brown. Okay, so now we just wait until that's done. Let it cool, of course, and then I'll catch up with the next steps in a minute. So for the confiture or jam, you just bring 1 kilo of sugar. In France they have confiture sugar, which includes citric acid, I believe, and it's 50 grams that you would need for 1 kilo of fruit to 1 kilo of sugar. So you just bring it to the boil and let it boil for 8 minutes. And by that time it will have reached setting point. You can go to the trouble of using a thermometer and doing it the right way, which I tend not to. So just for this recipe, I'll just do it this way. At some stage I will do the proper way to create confiture, but truly it's never failed me. So sometimes if you just give things a go, they work, and it's truly delicious. This is just the berries that we harvested this morning from the garden, and this will make maybe 3 jars of jam. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to add the rose petal leaves at the last minute. Tony, can you just get a picture of the roses? So I've just plucked the roses from the front rose garden. These are beyond beautiful. It's a bit of a struggle to actually pluck them because they're so beautiful and smell so beautiful. I don't mind eating them though, so something as pretty and delicious as that, it's worth doing it. So basically you just get the best petals from that, make sure that there are no insects, even though I'm pretty sure when I harvest fruit in the orchard and around the gardens I eat a fair few insects, and I don't really know. I haven't died yet, so I'm guessing it's okay. It's just a bit of protein. So with the petals, you pluck the best petals, rinse them and then pat them dry with paper towels. And then at the very end, maybe 1 minute before your boiling has stopped, you do need to turn your heat down once it starts to boil, because it will boil over. So turn it right down and just let it simmer at boil for the 8 minutes. So I usually guess 8 minutes. It's 6:15, so shortly we'll watch it, but I'll go and prepare the rose petal leaves and leave Tony in charge of not letting this boil over. So I'll show you this too. So it's advisable to, if you get a scum like this on the top. Just skim it as you cook. It's just that it gives you a clearer set with your confiture, and it doesn't really affect anything to stay there. It just will sit on the top of the jam as it cools. So it's best to take it off. For that, I love these old silver spoons that my nana used to have, but they just seem to work. So it's easy just to, as it's going, take it off. It's quite delicious to eat, actually. I'm going to actually try and make some ice cream if I can stop eating the raspberries. Or sorbet, actually. I think I'll give that a go soon. I think that would be just beautiful. Yeah. Many methods to remove this scum. I just find this the easiest. I'm all about easy these days. Although recently, having completed a course at Escoffier in Paris at the Ritz, it was so good to get back into a professional kitchen and just do things in the traditional way. However, I have to say, after being there for just a few hours, I was ready to collapse because I'd forgotten what hard work it is to actually be a chef. So you can be fastidious about this if you want. I actually don't mind this on my jam. It certainly doesn't affect the jam, so... there is a tip, Tony tells me, I've not actually done this before, or actually even heard of it, about turning your jam jars upside down when you're ready to store, when they're cool and you're ready to store them in your pantry, and leave them for 48 hours in that position, and so your top becomes the bottom and this gum will settle there. But yeah, I find like with that amount that I've done, which is not a great, it's just taken me a minute, maybe two, to do that, and I've actually got that much off. You don't really need to do much more than that, to be honest. If you don't want the seeds in your jam, as you can see, lots of little raspberry seeds. It will happen with most fruit that has, most berries, they'll have some type of seed. So the next thing you would do is put it through a very fine sieve before you bottle it. Of course, you bottle it into sterile jars. We put ours through the dishwasher because it is at temperature, but you can put them in a pot of boiling water and bring them to the boil, then let them air dry. Another method is to wash them in your sink and bake them in your oven to air dry, just for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Either or, it's very important that you use, everything is sterile and that your environment is very clean. But this is still going, and it's been going for, we just got about another 2 minutes, so it's time to add the rose petals. As you can see, stunning roses, and they are just so beautiful. But you need to remove the petals from the head and make sure that there's no damage to a petal such as that. Probably wouldn't hurt at all, but best not to put it in your jam or something that you're eating. So you do sort of have to hand pick every petal. I don't even include anything with that little damage on it, just because I'm a bit like that. Bit of a perfectionist when it comes to food. Most things really. Yeah, so I'm going to do this one. So that's a beautiful big rose. But often, you know, this is just part of nature. It gets damaged by bugs and the weather, and you could actually use the bottom part of that petal if you don't have a great lot of roses. I always like to put the red roses in, which are actually my most precious roses, I have to say, because it's not a big garden that these are in, and when we first come here they were just sticks, so pretty proud that we've got these growing now. So yeah, that's enough for that amount of jam to add the rose flavour. So I just wash them now, pat them dry a little bit, and they just go in. Oof. So, ready to go. Just actually love this process. Oof, see, it's really easy to miss a bit of ratty petal. As I said, it really wouldn't make a huge difference to you, it wouldn't kill you. It's just, I prefer it to be all perfect because the roses are perfect. So look at that, that's just so pretty. The petals actually in the next minute will disappear pretty much. It's just the taste and flavour that you'll get in them. And, oh, I wish I could smell it. Oh my God, so good. Yeah, so it wouldn't hurt to give it that extra couple of minutes, just because, yeah, see, it's going up. So the reality is, so I probably also forgot to mention, because I'm good like that, always use a wooden spoon, because it just doesn't affect the alchemy of jam making. I'm not really sure why, but it works best. I also keep my wooden spoons for particular uses. So this spoon I've been using for over probably 25 years. We had a restaurant in a former life, and I used this in the restaurant for any dessert making. And it's just a habit I had where I keep all of my utensils separate, so the jam spoon doesn't get used to do a beef or a pork or a chicken dish. And I just find, I don't know, chefs sometimes talk about it, flavouring the wood, and I kind of believe in that. Anyway, I like to think that it's still around, this old spoon, is still doing a great job. But what you can do at this point, because we're at 8 minutes now, is you can just take a spoonful, put it on a chilled plate. This is not particularly chilled, by the way, and you just let it set. So you can either chill this in your fridge, your plate, or now stick it in the fridge. And I'll show you what to do in a second. So just a little quick test to see if your jam is at setting point, which is why I don't necessarily do the temperature measuring and stuff like that. I guess I've been doing it so long, I just can visually see that it's at that point, which is actually setting point. So I'm turning that off now. And you've put this little bit on your cooled or your chilled plate, and then if you can run your finger through it and it separates like that, then your jam's at setting point. So you're good to go with your, cool this a little bit before you place it in your, well, I use that for a vase, but these jam jars are available readily at any Gamvert or lots of bricot places in France. You can use any jam jar as long as it's sterilised and good to go. But when you're at this point, just let it cool down for a couple of minutes, and then you can put them directly into these types of jars straight away. Leave the lid off until they're cooled and then seal. And as I said, we're still eating our jam from last season, and this tastes so good. It's beyond good, isn't it? Oh my God, I can't wait to inhale that.